Western Pacific Ocean, 2028. Everything begins here. The sky over Guam brightens as dozens of Chinese DF-26 ballistic missiles soar into the sky. Interceptor missiles from the air defense system and nearby Aegis-class destroyers manage to shoot down several rockets, but too many break through to the target. In seconds, Guam turns into ruins with shattered runways, burning fuel tanks, and destroyed bombers. At the same time, a Russian Yasen-class submarine in the Arctic launches a salvo of Caliber cruise missiles towards Alaska. The defense of Fort Glay is not designed to repel low-flying cruise missiles. It is intended for long-range nuclear missiles. Radar systems activate and fighter jets rush into the sky, but the attack happens quickly and unexpectedly. Some rockets are intercepted, others hit Elmendorf Air Force Base near Anchorage, and then Iran gets involved. Missiles are targeting American bases in the Persian Gulf. Fast tonnage ships are dispersing mines in the Hormuz Strait, a vital route for oil transportation. Hezbollah, supported by Iranian militia in Lebanon, is shelling northern Israel. Houthis, another Iranian group in Yemen, are launching drones and anti-ship missiles into the Red Sea. This is a coordinated first attack organized by China, Russia, and Iran. They do not intend to invade America itself. The goal is to strike such a blow that Washington becomes too occupied with internal problems to stop them abroad. China attacks Taiwan, Russia targets the Baltic states in Europe, and Iran attempts to block oil exports in the Gulf. The other BRICS members maintain their distance. Some are too dependent on trade with the USA. Others have close ties with Washington and most simply do not want to take risks. And to clarify, this is a scenario for discussion. And yes, nuclear weapons are off the table. Because if it were activated, we could finish this right here. The rockets are just the beginning. Hackers who have been embedding malware for years in the largest covert espionage operation in U.S. history finally press the trigger. Part of the power grid goes down. At the ports, container cranes freeze, leaving ships waiting at the approaches. In the Northeast, problems arise with air traffic control systems. For several minutes, flights are halted at major hub airports like John F. Kennedy, Newark, and Boston. Hundreds of planes are landing. Tens of thousands of passengers are trapped. The first shots are heard in space. Russian and Chinese anti-satellite systems are destroying American surveillance satellites. A pair of Chinese inspection satellites, long suspected of being disguised weapons, crashes into GPS system relays. Suddenly, precise strikes become more difficult. Navigation starts to fail. For the Pentagon, this is a nightmarish beginning. Blind spots of radars, slow target identification, and opponents attack simultaneously from different sides. Let's pause, because what happens next depends on the actual capabilities of each side to fight. On paper, BRICS has an initiative. China has the largest fleet in the world, a huge army, and a missile arsenal designed to keep the USA away from Asia. Russia, weakened by the war in Ukraine, still has thousands of tanks and artillery systems, as well as a powerful manufacturing base. Iran expands its influence in the region through drones, rockets, and militia groups across the Middle East. But the United States, the largest economy in the world, stands against them, spending more on defense than China, Russia, and Iran combined. They have 11 aircraft carriers, the largest submarine fleet in the world, and a global logistics system that no rival can match. The air forces, including F-22, F-35, B-1 Lancer, and B-2 aircraft, remain the sharpest edge of modern warfare. In addition, NATO allies possess hundreds of fighters, tanks, and guided missiles. Thus, the balance of power is not as straightforward as it may seem at first glance. In fact, the main issue is not just the number of ships, planes, or tanks. Will the strikes cause enough damage in the first hours to paralyze America's actions? Or will the USA withstand the blow, call its allies, and respond? The North American Command, tracking enemy planes and missiles, launches fighters into the air within minutes. F-22s rush over Alaska, defending the country from potential cruise missile threats. Others patrol the Pacific Ocean, ready for possible Chinese actions against Guam. Military bases across the country are on heightened alert. The readiness level of the U.S. Armed Forces rises by one notch. On Guam, Air Force and Navy engineers begin repairing the damaged runways, hoping to complete the work within 2 days to allow access for transport planes. In the sea, American submarines already on patrol are turning to search for a Russian submarine that shelled Alaska. In cyberspace, U.S. Cybersecurity Command is launching a counterattack. Rocket factories in China suddenly halt as their networks fail. Russian military supplies face issues as trains depart for the wrong locations. In Iran, command networks go offline. Then covert raids begin. B-2 bombers head into enemy airspace, joined by B-1 Lancers for strike operations. One wave hits Chinese missile force bases launching DF-26 missiles at Guam. Another wave targets Kaliningrad, destroying heavily defended S-400 systems. From the sea, Tomahawk missiles are launched. These are long-range cruise missiles from the USA, capable of hitting targets hundreds of miles deep into territory. Submarines launch them at a naval base on Hainan Island, which serves as a hub for the naval forces of the PLA. Others arrive at Iran's main port, Bandar Abbas, where its largest naval base is located. The hangars are gone, the submarine shelters are destroyed, key military facilities are burning. American morale shifts from shock to fury. The president appears on screens across the country. This is an attack on America. We will resist and end this on our own terms. NATO activates Article 5, which states that an attack on one ally is an attack on all. For the first time since September 9th, the entire coalition finds itself in a state of war. Suddenly, Russia faces not only the USA but also Europe. The sky above the continent fills with Typhoon, Rafale, and F-35 fighters. From Norway to Romania, Patriot and SAMPT batteries are activated. NATO warship escorts begin crossing the Atlantic. Moscow is at risk. Russian tanks are moving into the Baltics, targeting the Sukinsky Strait. Columns of T-90 tanks advance towards Riga. Belarus opens its territory, and heavy artillery rains down on Lithuanian cities. Throughout a tense week, NATO's eastern border appears vulnerable. However, NATO holds firm. Polish Abrams tanks and American paratroopers are digging in. German Leopards are moving east. British brigades are reinforcing Estonia. NATO controls the sky above them. Russian tanks begin to burn on the highways, destroyed by precision strikes. Then a counterattack follows. By the beginning of the second month, NATO mobilizes hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Operation Iron Avalanche begins. Polish, American, and German armored vehicles surge forward, liberating Lithuanian cities. British Typhoon fighters smash Russian supply lines. By spring, Riga is free. The capital of Estonia is under protection. Russian troops retreat. Belarus begins to weaken. Lukashenko's regime wavers under NATO pressure and internal unrest. The Baltics are safe. Russia's gamble has failed. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Ocean, a conflict continues. China sends amphibious ships towards Taiwan. The People's Liberation Army fights to capture the beaches. Taipei is under threat of capture, but the forces of the USA and Japan halt the enemy's advance. In the Taiwan Strait, Virginia-class submarines sink Chinese landing ships. B-2 bombers breach coastal defenses, destroying missile positions. Japanese F-35 fighters fly alongside American Raptors, depleting the air forces of the PLA. Fights move to the South China Sea. The Marine Corps captures reefs and destroys missile batteries. American aircraft carriers, despite suffering losses, continue their advance. By mid-year, the Chinese Navy loses dozens of ships. The remaining ships stay close to the shore, sheltered under reliable air protection. The blockade around China intensifies. Oil imports dwindle. Chinese factories slow down, then stop. A shortage grips the country. Most importantly, Taiwan must endure. The invasion fails as supply lines are cut. The trapped troops surrender or are isolated. What Beijing hoped to see as its great victory turns into an expensive defeat. In the Middle East, Iran's initiating strike loses momentum. American aircraft carriers strike daily in the Arabian Sea. The port city of Bandar Abbas turns to ruins. Fast boat bases of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard along the coast become smoking wreckage. Israeli intelligence helps identify missile launch sites. Saudi patriots shoot down the remnants of the Iranian arsenal. By spring, the Strait of Hormuz is reopened under reliable protection. Minefields are cleared. Convoys begin to move again. Oil flows once more. The Iranian fleet is destroyed. Its aviation is shattered. Proxies are still firing rockets but are deprived of supplies. Iran has been neutralized for several months. Egypt and Ethiopia threaten and demonstrate their power, but do not intervene in the conflict. Considering NATO's full involvement, both countries decide to stay on the sidelines. Looking back, it can be said that the worst happened in the first hours. Guam was on fire. The American base was attacked by Russian missiles, Tanks advanced into the Baltics, and Hormuz was closed. For a moment, it seemed that the alliance had knocked America off balance, but soon the situation changed. NATO counterattacks liberated the Baltics. Taiwan held firm. Hormuz opened again. By the third month, BRICS began to lose assets it could not replenish. The unity of the alliance cracked. India tried to stay on the sidelines, reducing its actions. Brazil remained aloof. South Africa maintained neutrality. What could have been a unifying blow turned into countries acting alone. What does the world look like a year later? In the Pacific Ocean, American aircraft carriers are still at sea. Taiwan remains standing, and outposts in the South China Sea are back under the control of allies. The Chinese fleet has suffered such losses that its blockade can no longer be maintained. In Europe, NATO remains in position. Russia's offensive has been repelled. Belarus is unstable, and Ukraine is slowly reclaiming lost territories. Moscow's army is severely weakened, and the economy is collapsing. In the Persian Gulf, the threat from Iran has been neutralized. Oil routes are open, convoys are moving, and proxy armies have been isolated and alone. By the end of the year, the BRICS coalition has disbanded. Only China and Russia remain in the struggle, both countries exhausted. Of course, the USA and NATO suffered losses, but they achieved victory. Could BRICS have reached a draw? Perhaps, if the USA had lost a few aircraft carriers, or if Russia had managed to capture the Baltics before NATO could respond adequately, which is unlikely. But, except for a miracle, their combined forces were never enough to surpass the alliance that stood against them. But perhaps the real question is what the world will look like the day after their defeat.